Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. I'm just a little nervous. So I worked on a research project last year with the Family Councils program. And it was a project that highlighted the stories of families, residents in the long-term care industry in Ontario. So I would like to acknowledge first the family members who have participated, the residents, the staff, administrators, policy analysts. As you'll find out, the way that how this project was constructed is that our identities are not, we're not just a professional, but we have other identities that construct who we are. I'm going to try to go quickly. So the research project came out of the question of what is diversity. There were a lot of calls coming in with the Family Councils program regarding residents in care, the care not adhering to who they are, whether it be their food, the activity practices, and care itself. So the way that care was defined wasn't actually the medical intervention, but the emotional social piece of care. Activities which included recreational activities that are provided in a long-term care home, and then food that's also provided. So the objective was to collect these stories for a resource for families and residents. So it was co-constructed by families and residents and for families and residents. So the questions were, what are the experiences of families and residents with food, care, and activity practices in long-term care homes in Ontario? And I used intersectionality theory to guide this project. So it's a feminist theory, a methodology for research, and a springboard for a social justice action agenda. It starts from the premise that people live multiple layered identities derived from social relations, history, and the operation of structures of power. People are members of more than one community at the same time and can simultaneously experience oppression and privilege. So an example that's given is a woman that may be a respected medical professional can suffer domestic violence in her home. So that we come with these multiple identities, and this constructs how we maneuver in these larger systems. So I did 3 sampling techniques just to get a broader understanding of this, to capture the stories within Ontario and to get just a little more understanding of what food, care, and activity practices mean for family members that have loved ones in long-term care. So the first one was an online survey, and recruitment was based on the Family Councils program sending out emails. Also, I went to various long-term care events, and I also provided a flyer last year at this same conference where I recruited participants that are part of the long-term care industry, but also have family members in care. So 58 participants participated in this online survey, which was anonymous, and it gave just a snapshot of the identities that are part of the long-term care industry. So 86% of family members and persons of importance participated. 44% were ages 55 to 64. The age, I highlight the age because the group that takes care, the caregiver role, was mainly females, identified females that had to take care of their children, their families, as well as their loved ones in care. So it was an important piece to bring out in the project. 86% identified with a specific language, cultural, and ethnic identity. 20% of participants identified with a disability or disabilities. 83 of participants identify as female, and 5% of participants identify as LGBTQ. That's a limitation of this study because recruitment didn't specifically target LGBT communities. So I just did a main overview, and because of the restrictions, it was just me doing this project. I only got a small sample, so that could be an opportunity to explore further. So based on the scaling questions that were provided, generally food care and activity practices somewhat do not provide adequate care when it comes to their personal identity, whether it be their ethnic identity when it comes to food. A lot of language barriers that happen. Some people go back to their mother tongue when they have dementia, and what happens is the resident can experience abuse in that situation because they may be saying, can you stop? I don't want you to touch me, but that person may not receive that information, which is a very big gap right now in the long-term care industry. And what are residents of long-term care homes and families saying? That there's not enough PSWs, but there was a specific understanding of this, that there's quality versus quantity. So if the dedication and commitment is there of 4 PSWs on the floor versus 8, then the quantity doesn't really matter. It's more about that dedication and that commitment that PSWs or frontline workers have to the residents. Language barriers and knowledge of activities for specific conditions are not available. So that gap with education and awareness around different issues that residents may face. Okay, and then I did 4 focus groups with 4 long-term care homes in Ontario and 4 individual interviews to get more of a personal story and understanding of their experiences to create a resource for the families. And as you can see, the 4 focus groups for the long-term care homes, one was in North York, Haldimand County, Scarborough, and downtown Toronto. And for the individual interviews, the participant was in Guelph, in the long-term care home where their loved one was in Guelph. The second participant was in Toronto. The long-term care home was in Scarborough. Participant 3, they lived in Halifax, but their loved one lived in a long-term care home in Toronto. And another participant, she lived in Ottawa, and the long-term care home was in Sturgeon Falls. So out of all of this data gathering, encoding, and transcribing, 7 themes came out of this project, which really highlight what family members and residents are saying about their experiences and little innovative ways of practice. So the first one is communication, which our previous speaker spoke about. So how communication affected each participant and their interpretation of communication, so going beyond hi, how are you doing, and how communication can be challenging when you have a diverse background. So if you have a language barrier, or if you convey communication a different way other than talking. So a quote is, communication can go beyond saying hello. It can be a smile, a touch on the back, and a nod to acknowledge my father is in the room. He can't speak or move his muscles, but he feels. So just acknowledging that, you know, communication is not just, hi, how are you doing? Okay, I gotta go. Because that may not be the case, because you're not taking into account the residents' ability, maybe can't speak to you anymore because of their condition. The second one is advocacy versus leadership. Advocacy is very subtle in such a large industry, and a lot of family members and residents align themselves of using the word leadership, when in fact they are doing a lot of advocacy work. So how these roles are used simultaneously, but the label of advocacy and leadership, leadership is used more often because they're met with less resistance sometimes when they're talking to management or trying to coordinate some type of care. Another quote is, "I can't speak English well, but I know what my mom needs. I love her. She took care of me, and now it's my turn to take care of her. I am a leader, I'm assertive, and I make sure she is comfortable and other residents too." The next one is moving from awareness to education, and this is the most important piece that came out of this project, was not, rather than just having an awareness of the issues that residents encounter and live with, moving to education and knowledge building can place a little bit more of accountability and have a bigger impact with those who care for loved ones in long-term care. This is also important for people that have diverse identities because it can help better navigate the system and the process or outcome can be less stressful. So another quote is, "Being educated on my parents' medical conditions and not just the name of it is really important. I think going beyond awareness of aging issues will help in how these issues are addressed. Let's get passionate and knowledgeable and not do the minimal anymore." These were the feelings of family members and residents. The next one is fragmented identity. Our identities become stripped away when we enter institutions, and then we're put back together again, but it becomes fragmented sometimes. So another participant said, "If they only saw my mom for who she truly is, not her dementia, the sores on her skin, or her dentures by her bedside. My mom is strong, loving, and has a fulfilling life. She broke into pieces when she came in here. Can we put her back together again?" So really talking about person-centered care, hearing the stories of how families and residents experience institutional life, because although it's constructed as a home, a lot of residents and family members that have to go through the process of putting their loved one in care, it's very difficult. So the next one is, I'm almost done. So the next one is, "Welcome to your new home." I mean institutional life. And it's coming to terms that the long-term care home is not a home that you were living in for your whole life, and how families have made it a home. So this is where the innovation really came into play, of little pieces that the research project brought out of how families and residents work together to make their long-term care home more of a home. So it wasn't her home at first. There were no tissues on her table and her books were in a bag, but we made it her home. We bring her favorite books. She enjoys food from home sometimes. It may have been like a hospital at first, but we've made it her home. The second last one is, "Time has a whole new meaning. Time is valuable rather than disposable." So then another participant said, "I'm not saying he has to go to all the recreational activities, but once a week would be great. His time is not disposable anymore, it's valuable. We don't care about time when we're doing our daily activities, but in the home, time is valuable, a gift, and I want my dad to enjoy his time." And the last one is one that a lot of participants really wanted to talk about more, and it was about, privacy, intimacy, and touch in long-term care. So every action within institutions has these three terms and come with very different meanings for each participant. So one participant said, "We forget how meaningful our daily routines are, the good morning hug, the brushing of our teeth, kicking under the table. It just doesn't go away when we get older. My mom likes to wear lipstick and she likes to have privacy when she's reading." So, sorry. For this research project, I wanted to capture the voices and illustrate them in meaningful quotes and in a resource for families and residents in long-term care. As a collective of families and residents that have participated in this, rather than creating a tool or a model to follow, as you realize after my presentation, that long-term care is also very personal and unique to who we are, our identities, and that it can't follow a set of rules all the time and practices, rather becoming more mindful and open to building knowledge on navigating a complex growing industry.
Well done. I'm very impressed with the amount of material you both were able to share in those very short snippets, but really